Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Debate Club. So, this is a platform where we engage in weekly debates and discussions on various topics. The topic for this week is marital rape should be made a criminal offense. Agree or disagree? So, before we get into the pro and con stance of the debate, I'd like to define what the phenomena of rape is according to the Indian Penal Code. So, Section 375 of IPC states that rape is defined as a sexual intercourse with a woman without her consent, against her will, or under certain circumstances where her consent is not valid. And it is also noteworthy that the same section has an exception. The exception 2 of Section 375 of the IPC decriminalizes marital rape, stating that non consensual sexual intercourse with a wife over the age of 18 is not rape. Now, there is the Domestic Violence Act of 2005 in place, which hints at marital rape by any form of sexual abuse in a live in or a marriage relationship. However, it only provides for civil remedies for such issues, and there is no way for marital rape victims in India to initiate criminal proceedings against their perpetrators. Now, to outline the pro and con stances for this debate, people who believe that marital rape should be a criminal offense are of the belief that it protects the rights of marital rape victims and it provides for equality before law, meaning that marital rape is treated as any other form of rape. Marital rape is non consensual and rape can occur within a marriage. And this stance also aligns with global human rights standards, where people who are of the opposite stance believe that criminalizing marital rape could interfere with privacy and sanctity of marriage, and this could lead to a lot of false accusations as well as a rise in divorce. So, with that context in place, we'll now start the debate. People who wish to speak can raise their hands using the reaction button, and you will be given a chance to speak in that. Prince, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Rose. So first of all, since Rose has kind of given a very good context of the debate, so I guess I can directly go into my opinion. That if marital rape is not criminalized, then does it not imply that marriage is just an institution of patriarchy to ensure the commodification of women? This is just to ensure and validate that women in a society is treated as some kind of object that is to be subdued by the man, because you are literally creating an exception in the rape laws. And keeping aside the legal challenges and issues that may arise, this will simply mean that we are outright sanctioning rape, even if we take into account the legal challenges. This is not a very civilizational way to deal with issues. Civilizations don't shy away from ethical decisions just because it could create some legal issues, which by the way could be solved in one session of a parliament. That approach is just barbarism. As one of the oldest civilizations of the world, we should look at the other half as well and not stand beside the wrong side of the history. And speaking law, Rose rightly pointed out that Section 375 of the IPC is clearly about the rape, and the exception 2 of this section excludes non consensual sexual intercourse by a husband with his wife, if the latter is above 15 years of age. And the emphasis should be put on non consensual. And recently we had Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita that was brought in to get away with the colonial laws and the colonial way of dealing with things. There also in section 63, there is a similar exception where it rules out forced sexual intercourse by a man with his wife aged over 18 years as rape. Uh, Again, special emphasis on forced sexual intercourse. So, this just tells me that the Indian state is ready to acknowledge that there is a lot of forced or non-consensual sexual intercourse going on between married couples, and you are still not giving those women equal rights. And this just gives me a simple conclusion that the state is saying that we'll make sure that your culprit is arrested, and I'm very consciously using the word arrested, not punished, but as long as you are raped outside your bedroom. Even the prior is a stretch because we saw what happened in the RG case. So I don't think we should, kind of uh, give away with the basic human rights and not allow the quote unquote other half of the population to to kind of suffer like this and not even have basic control over their own bodies. Yeah, Rose.
Thank you so much, Prince. Raghav, please go ahead.
Okay, so this topic is kind of I have I have a very nuanced perspective. I can't say yes or no to this. There are like points to be made on both sides. So I'll just like outline the rationales for like both the sides, and then like I'll also tell my conclusion as to like what should be done. So first of all, this is a tangential topic to another important topic as to the the effectiveness or the sensibility of the foundation of the rape laws in India. Okay, because the marital rape is it's a subsection of like a class of laws pertaining to rape. And obviously, like if you look at it from a like an uninformed perspective, obviously you would say that marital rape should be illegal because nobody, even if you are married to somebody, that doesn't mean that there is a blanket consent that is automatically offered, because these things are individual contracts. Like individual the individual has to have the right over their body, not the state. So obviously, if a spouse is having intercourse with with their other spouse without consent, it should be there should be some kind of a protection against that. But on the other hand, if you look at the definition of rape, it's I'll read it out again. So according to the section 375 Indian Penal Code, rape is defined as a sexual intercourse with a woman without her consent, against her will or under certain circumstances where consent is not valid. So by the definition itself, you can understand that it is framed from the perspective of a man. Okay, so just to outline the exact part, it's a sexual intercourse with a woman. They're basically saying that a woman is just like a receiving end. It's not a sexual intercourse, not an activity that is an exchange of like actions between a man and a woman. It's saying that it's framing it from the perspective of a man. So there is a sort of like a gender bias in the rape laws that exist, and these same rape laws would not apply to a man who is being forcefully had intercourse with by a woman. There are so many cases where women are the perpetrators and the men are completely there. They have like no defense. They cannot even make a legal complaint against these things. And and that is the foundational flaw of the rape law systems like the rape laws in India. We don't have like a sensible framework, first of all. And this whole like adding the marital rape on top of this is not the right thing. We need to basically foundationally reframe the whole rape law system. And then on top of that, if you extend it to say that, okay, marital rape is also criminalized, then it makes sense. But you take like a fundamentally flawed rape and then like a fundamentally flawed, like a framework, and then like extend it further. That is not a good move. And but that is not me saying that it is okay for people to undergo marital rape. I'm just saying that there needs to be a foundational shift, and then on top of that, if you can add it, then that's great. So that is the outline of my perspective on this. So I think I hope I summarized it with clarity. But yeah.
Thank you, Raghav. I pretty much agree with what you're saying because the definition of rape that we have right now, outlined by the IPC, is pretty much flawed. So basically, it is saying that uh, the man cannot ever be the victim because by definition, the man is the perpetrator, right? So there needs to be a more gender inclusive definition for rape. But in the current context, we can still see that there is a lot of, the current context when it comes to just women and in context of marital rape, I see this as like a violation of the right to Equality Act, because now you're segregating two classes of women, the married ones and the unmarried ones, and the married ones under the presumption of consent that this definition of rape is giving us. So we're kind of victimizing married women, aren't we? Right? Okay. I see Raghav raising his hand. Please go ahead, Raghav.
Yeah, I forgot to mention one more thing, which is there is a lot of like loopholes in the rape laws. One of it is that a lot of like false rape claims are made. I've seen like so many cases where, like, for example, let's say that uh, the girl and the boy, they chose to elope, and now the girl's parents, they make a complaint against the boy saying that the girl was kidnapped and raped. Okay, there are cases like this happening, and then there are cases where women file false rape charges against men for like maybe promising to marry them and then like breaking up with them or something like that. But they did have like consensual sexual intercourse, but the sort of like the laws are being used to abuse a different kind of you can say like a betrayal maybe, but that is not the same as rape. And these kind of like mixing of like crimes being like uh, filed under rape laws, this is actually a huge problem, because and also we don't have a proper framework for like what happens when a rape case is filed, because you have you have situations where these people, even if let's say that there is an actual rape case, and the woman files a complaint, and the police like have sufficient evidence to convict the man, and they do that. Now there is no database of like these sexual offenders, and there is no way to know that this person has a history. And there have been so many other cases where people who have been convicted on repeated counts of rape and especially child abuse and things like that, they come back and they do the same thing over and over again. There is no framework to like prevent in a consolidated way these things, and also there is no way to easily like I think there are a lot of victims of like false rape cases especially. So all of these things are like foundational issues. I think without doing this, if you bolster the marital rape law, you're going to have the extension of the same problems happening here. Imagine if a wife feels like her husband is not giving her what she wants, and she's basically like blackmailing him into filing a marital rape law. And especially in a marital context, right, it's easier to provide evidence of sexual intercourse happening and framing it as a non-consensual, because the person who had it is now coming and saying that they didn't give the consent. That is like that's like a ammunition for false rape allegations. Obviously in a marital context they are having intercourse, so like there is evidence of intercourse, but then there is not evidence of any denial of consent. So these things can lead to like a bankruptcy of the cultural like landscape, because like there are a lot of women who are petty in that they will probably file a marital rape case like again like against the husband, maybe because they have like some kind of like unresolved issue with the parents of the husband or something else. These kind of things will start happening, and now you get into the situation of like having blackmail and all these things happening. So I think without resolving the fundamental issues with the rape laws in India, if you kind of like bolster this, it's going to lead to a lot more problems. Not that marital rape is okay. I'm not condoning that. I'm just saying that without addressing the fundamental issues, you can't do this. So I just want to like add some more points to what I was saying earlier.
Thank you, Raghav. Anybody else who wishes to speak next?
I would like to speak. I'm sorry, I couldn't find the hand raising button.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, so first of all, this is truly a wonderful topic. Like all the previous debates, I'll play the devil's advocate. So before we start talking about marital law, let's talk about law in general. Should everything immoral be illegal? Should everything legal be moral? This is quite a, let's say, quite a str- gray area we are navigating into. So now the main spirit of the law is it should be concise, it should be to the point, and it should be understandable. But consent is quite an ambiguous term. How do we define consent? Is consent defined like verbally, where when a man and a woman are engaged, where do they just like, let's say, take a paper and say, yes, I agree to have intercourse with you? No, that is like explicit consent, but human communication is not always explicit. There is not this thing known as like non-verbal implicit consent, and all these don't fall into the bucket of the law. And I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with the term unenthusiastic consent. Let me give you an example. For example, you don't want to like eat something, but someone made it for you, but you eat it because you like it. Let's use this example even for an intercourse. For example, husband has come home after a tired day, so the wife is also very tired, and the husband is like, babe, let's have sex, all those kind of things. But she's also tired, but she doesn't want to have it, but she loves her husband enough so that she unenthusiastically allows for sex. So this cannot fall into the bracket of the law. A lot of the human interaction which takes place cannot be put into the bracket of a law, because a lot of them are just they just happen with the flow. This one also can be attributed to, like, let's say, sex. One more problem with marital rape is the way marital rape is defined. It's like its own class of rape. Are other rapes not rapes? Why is only marital rape a rape? So all rape should be treated equally, and there should not be a separate clause for marital rape. It should be treated like any other rape. We do not want to, like, let's say, like Rose previously mentioned, we don't want to put classes of, like, say, married woman rape. So yeah, these are all something that has to be concerned. So, and let's address the elephant in the room here. Okay, a marital rape case is filed. What's next? Because in India, a lot of women, like, let's say, 90% of the women do not have any other economic recourse apart from their, let's say, immediate family. So the moment a woman files a, like, let's say, a case, what are the avenues she has where she can go and take support from the government for herself and her children? Protection. We do not have all these things in place. Well, a popular argument that is made is, we'll look at it when it happens. No, it's a fatal flaw. If you half-heartedly frame a law, it's the people who are going to be impacted. You can do something good, but inadvertently you're doing 10 other bad things. So if we are going to frame this law, it should be framed in such a way that everything should be solid, right from filing and the after protection. But right now we only have, like, let's say, it's a crime, you go to the police, but what happens next? And one more thing we have to look at here is this one drives a different class of crime actually. So now that it has become illegal, the husband, let's say, is fully incentivized to silence his wife, who has given hints that she will file a case on him. He's fully incentivized to silence her permanently. So I think this isn't something we can just parade human rights around. Even though we are doing this for the good of the woman, if we do this in a half-assed fashion, they're the ones who are going to be in big trouble. It's not the man, it's the woman who's going to be in big trouble if we do this in a half-assed fashion. So yeah, for the time being, I do not want it to be a, like, let's say, a solid law unless we have solid frameworks in place which will ensure her protection so that she won't die. So yeah, for the timing, these are the arguments I can make. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Darshan. So I'd like to just tell you guys that in case you can't find the reaction button to raise your hand, you could see an option called reactions, and when you click on it, you can see the option to raise your hand, and that's how you're going to raise your hand and ask for the turn. Thank you. I'll now let Prince go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Rose. I'll just address some points made earlier. First of all, great points by all the speakers. Firstly, Raghav pointed out a great point that even men are raped, whether in a married construct or outside of it. True, it happens, and the laws are flawed. Uh, just because these laws were made during different times, and I guess it was Mr. Ovesi who did point it out in the parliament, but unfortunately, due to some issues, it could not come into the latest BNS. Uh, so, I guess the major issue that a majority of speakers here have is with the practicality of how the laws are implemented, or how the whole executive part is going to play out. Now, look, executive is a different form, a different layer of government, and we cannot postpone legislative actions just because our executive is not functional enough, or the judiciary is not working as per one might like the speed. And I guess it was Darshan who pointed out that all immoral things should be legal or not. That's a great debate. And right, where he also said that how consent is defined. Consent is defined the same way how a consent is defined outside of a outside of this construct of marriage. And when we are talking of marital rape here, we are talking about basic fundamental rights which come under the basic structure of the Constitution. We are talking about right to equality. We are talking about right to life and right to liberty. And I guess Darshan greatly gave a very good anecdote, and I'll appreciate him for explaining or defining the whole concept of commodification of women for those who were not aware of it. Lastly, uh, Darshan rightly pointed out that all rape should be equal and there should be no separate clause for for rape of married and unmarried women. Well, this is what this whole debate is about. There is, as of now, a separate clause for rape of married women, where the male class is given a complete free hand, and there is a separate clause mentioning that okay, all sorts of rape are rape except for the forced intercourse that happens between a man and a wife. I quote the section 63 of the BNS. So it is not that just because a husband can quote unquote murder his wife, we should not implement a law that is ensuring the fundamental rights of the woman. uh, if that is the case, why are we having the common rape laws? Because we get immense cases where the victim is killed after the bad deed, just to make sure that there is uh, no proper legal process that can be followed. And it's such a flawed concept in itself that just because the executive is not working properly, we should not even do the legislative functions, because at the end of this day the system is flawed. We need to improve it one step at a time. Yeah, Rose.
Thank you, Prince. I'll now let Pragya go ahead.
Thanks, Rose. So I'm attending this for the first time, but I'll go on. So I believe that marriage is a very sacred union, and it comes with certain expectations. If we start recognizing marital rape explicitly, so that can itself at times come to a state where it starts eroding the foundations of trust in a marriage. If we look at the stats also, so approximately all the domestic violence cases which are there, only 12 to 15% of them are genuine, and rest of them are used. They are not even enough evidence to prove them. So when it comes to marriage, also it is something which is very private. It has a private sort of nature in the relationship, and it could be used negatively also. So there could be false accusations leading to disputes, and actually breaking the starting questioning the foundation of the marriage itself. So there are a lot of nuances if we talk specifically about marriage as a relationship. Now, in some of the communities, there are even tradition where a marriage is not legalized, or it is not accepted. it is not complete until it is consummated. So now, if the act is taken upon and it later comes out with a mixture of certain sort of um, violence, because there is a lack of communication or understanding. So it is very difficult to prove it whether it was a genuine case or it was not. And these type of, if it is encouraged, if marital rape is actually criminalized, so I think this can be used negatively and leading to a lot of load on the judicial system. So there should be more of laws which can be, instead of criminalizing marital rape, we could think about there could be something around providing proper counseling and ensuring that these violence cases are not used in a negative way. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Pragya. I mean, I'm a little split on this perspective. Like, I do agree that marriage is a very sacred union, but to presume somebody's consent for something that is of a sexual nature is a little, I don't know, unreasonable to me. And the statistic provided for domestic violence, I'm not sure what the basis or the source is. But if that is the case, the domestic violence cases in India are dismissed in case of lack of evidence. So I don't know. And like counseling, I mean, for me, rape victims, man or woman, in a marriage, not in a marriage, is the same. A rape victim is a rape victim. And I don't know what you meant by the counseling part, but then I don't know how you counsel a rape victim instead of providing them with justice. So that's what I personally had to say about it. I see Raghav raising his hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a quick point to make. First of all, that statistic about domestic violence, I would love to see some kind of substantiation about it. I think maybe Pragya, if you could in the chat, right, if you could post a link to the statistic that you posted, that would be helpful. And also, again, pointing to the point that Prince made regarding how the legislative should not be restrained because of a shortcoming in the executive branch of things. That's a very valid point. And that's the same thing applies to the point she made about how, if you do this, then we're going to have like an overload of cases. And that's not a good rationale for creating a law, basing the law based on. But I do agree with the certain, I do agree with the sentiment against rape laws. I just think that it doesn't make any sense, because one of the other things is that rape is a subset of domestic violence. That's how I see it. And there are, I can imagine a situation where the wife is being raped by the husband, but there is no other aspect of domestic violence involved. Obviously, if somebody is forcefully having sexual intercourse with somebody, there will be some amount of violence involved in that. And I think that there is in a situation like that, the most important thing is that the victim of that kind of abuse is protected, and they are removed from the situation, and they have some kind of like a legal recourse from that. So I don't think there is a need to have an additional marital rape law. I just think that the general rape law should apply even in that context. I think the sort of like a decriminalization of marital rape should be withdrawn. Instead of introducing a new rape law, you just like remove that exclusion that has been added, saying that rape happening in a marriage is decriminalized, because there is a legal exception. I think I forgot the exact the section or whatever, but that is the thing. And I think withdrawing that would by itself eliminate the ambiguity that we're facing right now. That's it.
Thank you, Raghav. I'll now let Darshan go ahead.
Yeah, speaking of statistics of domestic violence and rape laws, these are very, let's say, difficult territories to traverse into, because how do you even conduct a study of that nature? Because like currently we have to like consider the economic status of people who actually enter courts, because majority of the people who are capable of filing cases in courts, they're like, let's say, they're economically sufficient to pay a lawyer. And I've actually read this book called Whole Numbers and Half Truths, which actually tackles into this, let's say, cases. So majority of the cases, as per this researcher, is most of the, let's say, rape and all those other laws which are, like, let's say, faced by men, is majority of them are filed by the parents, because there is no clause in the Indian law for, like, let's say, this man ran away with my daughter by taking her with her consent because we didn't approve to her marriage, because this is a mouthful, and there is no, let's say, there is no law for that. So majority of these laws are basically being misused by parents of the girl, as per this book. And when actual places where all these are taking place, they have no place for legal recourse. You have to first consider how far Indian legal system is spread, because India's laws are spread only across a handful of cities and a few towns. The rest of all, they have no idea that we have a constitution. And these are the people who actually need it. And the people, let's say, there is a strong debate of misusing and all those kind of things, right? So the people who are actually misusing is, they're of a higher statistic, because they are the only ones who make it to courts. The genuine ones do not make it to courts because they have no legal recourse, they have no resources to get a lawyer. Even pro bono lawyers won't take up cases that far from the vicinity. So yeah, before we start throwing around statistics, we have to, like, measure the where the statistic comes from, because a lot of these statistics are either, let's say, no one is honest to a statistician. If someone comes and asks me, hey, did you do this, I'll obviously say no, because people aren't honest with all those who come for data collection. So yeah, before we start tossing around statistics, I'd like us to know the sample space, the how it was conducted, and the localities where it was conducted. Because if you conduct it in a highly metropolitan area where people are aware of all these thanks to media exposure, it'll come out to a different result. You have to, like, have a nationwide, like, say, statistic, like what the NSS and NSO does, and they do a fantastic job. Yeah, if you can go through the website, they have actually good statistics with good sample space and good descriptions of whatever they do. So yeah, statistics, that's a slippery slope we have to look at it, because whatever happens within four walls, no one knows. So statistics for whatever happens between four walls, yeah, it has to be taken with a pinch of salt. So that's what I wanted to add here today.
Thank you, Darshan. Sandeep, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I would like to go back to the fundamental way of making a law. So 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 we inherently expect a law to be to deliver justice to a victim and uh, deliver punishment or sentence to a perpetrator, right? That is how usually any type of law works. It could be any scenario. It could be rape or domestic violence or even tax fraud. But we have, I think, historically, India has a tendency to take an issue and make a law with a good intention, right? And the good intentions doesn't give results. There is a thing called Cobra effect. In the times of Britishers, the Britishers, like uh, they were so afraid of the cobras, they had a bounty on anybody who can capture a snake and bring it to them. They will be awarded with a bounty. So initially the snake population did went down, but eventually the snake population has exploded. Then they didn't actually understood why. After research, after getting into it, they understood that people are brewing, they're reproducing cobras so that they can get a bounty from the British. So the intention was good. The law is supposed to reduce the number of snakes in the vicinity, but the very law is used against its own very the good intention that it is meant for. So if I have to take an example away from the rape law, I would give an example of discrimination law in India. So it is initially made to towards the marginalized communities who is being discriminated But I've seen multiple instances in the modern world that these laws been used against public servants and even the the so-called higher communities. So a law should only be made in a way that it delivers justice to the victim instead of having a law just trying to solve one specific issue. I understand that some issues are very rampant and very intensive in the society, like discrimination that happened a long time ago and which is still probably happening in many villages and cities. And we have to also understand how efficient these laws are. Are they able to deliver any transformation throughout these years, or are they actually being used are being misused? So I totally understand that some laws are relevant to some extent to a specific issue, but it is, I think, fundamentally understood by everybody that a law should be, it cannot be too specific to something that it can be misused, and victims can, it turns the tide around, right? Like the victims are not victims are becoming perpetrators and the perpetrators are becoming victims. So I think that is how the fundamental way of looking at making a law itself, because there is some incident happened in Delhi long time ago, and then we bring out a Nirbhaya law because of all the noise is happening out there, and then that very law is being used against the even women itself, right? So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. I'll now let Darshan go ahead.
Thank you, Sandeep. That was the word I was looking for when I was making my point earlier. Previously I mentioned you can do one thing and inadvertently you cause 10 other bad things. Yeah, this was what I meant, the Cobra effect. So first of all, like I previously mentioned, the law has to be precise and to the point. But this one, let's say, whatever happened in a confined room, like let's say marital rape, there is no such, as we all know, the legal system operates under the belief guilty until proven innocent. So whatever happens in four walls cannot be proven. That is actually like, that's a fatal flaw in the law. You cannot, let's say, there is no chance for defense because one of the things that a civilized society does is we have to give recourse to the victim and we have to give legal recourse to the, like let's say, the plaintiff and defendant. Both of them should actually get legal representation. But in the case of marital rape, the only thing that goes on is the victim's word, which is totally against the spirit of the law. While I do understand that this is a complex problem, but we cannot be undermining the spirit of the law for a single incident. So yeah, this is something that the legal system has to consider because this is going against the very spirit of the law. Because one side has a legal recourse and the other side doesn't have a, let's say, chance to prove themselves because there are no tools of themselves proving that I didn't do this deed. We did this deed consensually. I mean, a lot of us say false cases are only are a small number, and there are a lot of large cases which go unreported. Yeah, but the legal system operates under the belief that I don't care if like 1,000 people are bad. I don't want that one good guy to going to jail because he had no legal recourse. So first thing is we cannot be undermining the spirit of the law irrespective for any other reasons. Today we'll undermine the spirit of the law for, let's say, this incident. This one will give the government leeway to, like, let's say, invade more because, like, let's say, undermining the law little by little, that's how you get a totalitarian government. Currently, I don't think people appreciate the kind of system we have in India because right now in India all three powers are divided: the legal, the executive, and the political. They're all divided. There is no intersection. So this law is something that will, I think, cause an intersection of all the powers, which we don't want happening because, or else we will end up like the US government where court judge, court judges can be appointed by the political body. We do not want that. So I think like this is one law that it doesn't just deal with marital rape. It will cause a domino effect of, let's say, going into a lot of things. I mean, this might be a paranoid way of thinking, but it is not without historical precedent. Yes, that's it. I made my
Mhm.
point.
Thank you. Raghav, please go ahead.
I want to draw a distinction between the example that Sandeep gave versus what this is. I think that these two are not the same. First of all, um, so with the whole system about bounties, right? The motive for setting up a bounty is that you are trying to incentivize something which you want to happen. So in the example that he gave, where like they could set up a bounty for killing those snakes, they did that in order to incentivize all the things that need to happen for the population of the snakes to go down. So you basically set an incentive for it, and people will do what you want to get done. But that is not the same as a situation where you have a crime that happened. A bounty is not the same as a law that is meant to sort of punish the criminal. And if you take a like a bigger picture of this, right? The whole reason why these laws exist is to sort of like disincentivize crimes. So incentivizing some action versus disincentivizing something these are two separate classes of behavior. They work differently. So I think that's why the analogy breaks. From my perspective, I think the analogy breaks. You can, if you're taking a broader like abstract essence of that and saying that, okay, if you set up a law, you're designing it to minimize certain things in society, then that is okay. But even there, like, I think you need to understand that you cannot like foresee and anticipate all the potential ways in which it can backfire. So it's more like an art than a science, because like you don't know how things are going to change down the line that can actually make a law that is relevant and good for today's conditions to even change, maybe like in certain contexts that you haven't foreseen. So I think these things happen. That's the reason why it's a trial and error method, and that's the reason why we have exceptions and ways to like modify laws and all these things. But I do agree with the fundamental sentiment about like how as a society we have a long way to go in order to like sort of democratize justice, because justice is something that only certain people can access. It's not a right. It's more like a commodity that is supplied to certain people. That's how the on ground reality is. I think we started off with the whole marital rape thing, but there are fundamental flaws in the base of this whole operation that no matter how well you craft a marital rape law, it's not gonna actually do anything because the foundation is flawed. So I think we need to have like a larger debate about the efficacy of the legal system in India and what needs to change. I think maybe we can have it as a brainstorming topic. By the way, every month we conduct like a brainstorming series of brainstorming sessions on a certain topic, and I think for this month, for November, we still haven't set a topic yet. And I think I would propose that we need to set up a topic on how we can reformulate the legal structure of Indian, or like the legislative aspect of Indian laws. So I think we can maybe like throw around some suggestions on that, and we can finalize a topic statement. So, but every Wednesday at 7 p.m. we conduct a session on like how to actually do this. We have a more focused discussion on how to do things, so we can do that. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Raghav. Prince, please go ahead.
Thanks, Rose. Um, there's first of all great points by Raghav, and there are some things I would like to just add to what he said. Someone said no one knows what happens behind four walls, in an assumption that the domestic violence or the marital rape that's going on behind four walls only impact that couple. It has a serious impact on the whole of state. It is a proven fact that the people, when a child is born from a mother that has gone through either domestic violence or marital rape, has a very high probability of having a low cognitive ability or a low IQ, as people call it. And this is essentially a very weird way in which we are going to even decrease the level of intellectual discourse in the whole nation, because we are essentially reducing the intellectual quotient of the whole state by sanctioning this rape. And it is a different thing saying that laws don't work in India and they are misused, like the Cobra effect. uh, First of all, there is a logical fallacy in that argument, but even if we for the sake of argument take that argument in, keeping aside whether that law works or not, uh, the basic question that we as a society needs to contemplate on is, should as a society we be sanctioning rape where a majority of our women are married, and we are taking away their fundamental right of even over their own body and choices over their intercourse and other stuff. Secondly, I guess it was a slip of tongue, but I have to correct it because it was awkward. The legal system works on innocent until proven guilty, and not guilty until proven innocent. A man or a woman against whom charges are laid, we are talking about rape, so I'll stick to man because of the laws that exist in India. A man is innocent until he's proven guilty, and that is the reason why most of the marital rape or rape case, not marital rape, rape cases are proven not proven true, because we all know as a society what goes on behind the curtains. There are political pressure put on the victim. The society threatens the victim rather than the culprit. There is immense pressure from even the police administration to kind of make this all thing go under the rug so that it does not come under record, and uh, their records are clean for their own benefit and their own promotions. uh, it is a society that is essentially based to kind of guilt trip the innocent against whom the deed was done, and protect the culprit. So should we not even give the should we not given the people who are at the receiving end of this violence a basic option to go in and going into the legal system and try their chance? Lastly, someone said it is a way in which government will invade more into our private lives. I recall a great point said by Hannah Arendt, I guess. She said that state cannot be absent because the continuous the repression of women that has happened throughout the history of the humankind. If a state is absent in the personal sphere, then the state is by virtue giving or sanctioning the exploitation of women that's going on. We need to have positive discrimination against women so that they can achieve a level of at least equality in the state, and then we can kind of move forward from there.
Thank you, Prince. I pretty much agree with everything that you've said so far. From my end, personally, there are like 3 points I'd like to make. It's that one, the definition of rape that we have currently in the IPC needs to change. The exception 2 of section 375, if I'm not wrong, needs to be scratched off. And 3, the access to justice and the inequality that exists in this case, something needs to be done in this case because I think it was Raghav who was mentioning it. It's justice, not the exact words, but I think the gist of it was like justice has become a sort of privilege. You need to have certain kinds of resources or influence to even access it, right? So these are the 3 points I wanted to make personally. And if there's anybody else who wishes to speak next, please use the reaction button to raise your hand. Saying it again, people who wish to speak next will have to raise their hands using the reaction button.
By the way, I think if nobody wishes to speak, right, well, what we can do is like we can immediately go into the, I guess, the open discussion session aspect of the session. But I think, see, Hari has raised his hand.
Yeah, just a second. Hari, please go ahead.
Hello everyone. Good morning. I would like to speak about Marshall and currently what is happening in the society as we see is that uh, people are going too specific on their own wishes and needs. Everybody has some kind of thinking and imagination, and that they wanted to fulfill in their life. Everybody in mindset there is something like you only live once, so you have to go ahead and you have to like fulfill your imagination or whatever dreams that you have in your life. So in that specific in the sense they wanted to like they are having some kind of imagination in their like premarital life and post life. They are having some kind of they are seeing in like through cinema or in real life. They are watching some kind of things that happen surrounding, and they are learning few things, and they wanted if that happens to us it will be good, right? So those kind of mindset is over time it comes up on them. In that specific they wanted to like impose that on the other person or the partner of them. It might be whatever the relationship, a marital relationship or living together, whatever it is. So they wanted to impose the other person. They are not trying to like see. They have to first of all the both parties like the male or female or whatever gender it is. They have to convey to the other person that clearly that this is what I need, and this is they should be clear enough to explain to the other person that. Uh, some kind of they have to know okay this is what this person needs. They have to know that kind of sense that they should have, so you will be fulfilling with both together, or you can take decisions accordingly. Okay, it's not something like you wanted you have something in your head like some kind of thoughts in your head, and the other person wants to like recognize or they have to feel and they have to act accordingly to your mindset. That cannot happen so easily, right? Because whatever you are thinking necessarily not the other person thinks, right? So you have always that you should have a clear communication, or you have to show some kind of action that they should understand very well that okay this person needs this, this is what he wants to fulfill with us. So we have to make sure that if that happens, then he will be like we are in a happy mood together, something on that sense, right? These in this context, we can see that if this is if these things are clear enough, these kind of like whatever naming like a rape or forced sex, these kind of things will happen in like post marriage or pre marriage, whatever it is. These can be like neglected or prevented based on these clear signs you are showing to the other person. Instead of that, if you are still hiding your own things and you wanted the other person to fulfill it, it not necessarily in all cases will happen. It might happen, but it it, it is not 100% sure that it will fulfill your life. So it is necessary each and every person should communicate very well with the other person. That is the one point I would like to tell. And also these I strongly condemn like these kind of things should not happen, because if you force the other person or the partner, it is not good, right? If you are forcing in the sense you are making them unhappy with you, it leads to a divorce or it leads to something else. they might even commit sometimes a suicide or something like that. That should not happen in any case. Okay, because if they are too vulnerable to your thing and you are too dominant over them, these kind of things should not happen to anybody in their life, right? Not everybody is so like made up of stone heart or something like that. There are people with a light hearted. There are people who wanted to, like, they are kind enough to give something to others. So those things to be considered as well. And you have to people have to come to a knowledge, not only whatever see in your visual life, like whatever YouTube or whatever social media you're seeing, whatever like cinema you are seeing, like these kind of things is not applicable, necessarily not applicable to your real life. Reality is something greater than that you see in visually. You have to experiences, not like you don't want to like a dramatize or something like that. You have to experience it well, you have to live your life, and also you have to respect the other person as well. So yes, this is what I would like to tell. Yeah, I think my time is up.
Hari, I have a doubt. So the gist of what you said is basically that a proper consent should be established in between both partners. So there is no confusion about the said consent, and this is like a preventive measure to uh, non-consensual intercourse happening. Is that what you were trying to say? I'm just
Yes.
asking for a. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Hari. All right, so I think we all are pretty much on the same page. So if anybody has a concluding statement in mind, you can start giving your concluding statements. So for that, you'll have to raise your hands, and then we'll be moving into the unmoderated session, which will be a discussion. So if you have any concluding statement in mind, now is the time. Yes, please, Darshan.
Yeah. So if this is to be implemented with a strong favor. Let's not implement it in a half-assed fashion where everyone gets hurt. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, please.
Yeah. Uh, since it's a concluding statement, I'll just say that there were a lot of issues about the executive part, especially is if the judiciary, will be able to handle the load or not. And something tells me that it is the judiciary that's gonna make a law on the implementation or criminalization of marital rape. It's just that we are waiting for the new CGI to take up the role and listen into them. Yes.
Thank you, Prince. Anybody else who would like to make a concluding statement before we move ahead? All right, I don't see any raised hands, so we will now be moving into the unmoderated session. So general instructions are that since this is a discussion and not a debate, you guys are no longer required to use the reaction button to raise your hands. But please remember to be respectful and don't cut each other off while speaking. Thank you.
Just a question to start off the discussion. Uh, if we are to go into that debate of whether marital rape should be criminalized or not, then I'll repeat my question again. If marital rape is not criminalized, then does it not imply that marriage is just an institution of patriarchy to ensure the commodification of women? It's just a way to make sure that women are subdued to the quote unquote greater male class.
Uh, I'd like to like put up a converse statement to this. I'll play the devil's advocate here, obviously. So if marriage is a patriarchal institution where, like you said, where you can forcefully like implement this oppression on the woman, let's say the converse. Is marriage an institution where a man is trapped into providing for a woman and his children, even though he doesn't want to provide for them? I mean, can this one also be tossed around with the same weight? Because remember, marriage is not between just like you don't marry heir. Marriage is between two partners, so both of them are equally disadvantaged. So, can this also carry the same weight? Can a man forcefully provide for a woman and children, even though he doesn't want to? Yeah, so this is something we can ponder over.
Yeah, that's a great point. But this is just not taking into account that it is not only the male class that's taking care. We are just providing the monetary resources. On the contrary, I'll argue that it is the women class that's taking care of the family and the children. It is the women class that's prior to this generation was mostly engaged in the housework activities and making sure that the house stays in order and for the male class to go out and complete their monetary requirements.
Isn't what you said like contrary to what you said? You just said, I mean, I know you were meaning it in a historical context. Didn't you just say a man is nothing but a financial instrument for a woman to, let's say, satisfy her and her children's needs? Isn't this like what patriarchy? Isn't this like a patriarchal statement to make? A man has no role in the marriage apart from giving money to a woman so that she can raise herself and the children. This is also quite an archaic definition because if we go along this route, a lot of discussions will pop up, let's say, which won't look good in an unmoderated session, but it has to be said. Because if we just start talking about, like, let's say, one party is, let's say, cons, the other party will also have their own cons. So, yeah, this is something we can still ponder over again.
Yeah, because this is something that came into effect because earlier the mostly the work was the thing that we did in the grounds, the thing that we did in the fields. Most of the workforce was just peasantry activities. So we kind of made an institute, we kind of made an agreement that man is good physically, quote unquote. So he'll go and work in the fields to get the monetary resources while the woman takes care of the houses. So it's kind of neglecting or equating both the factors that it's not only the man that's taking care of the house, it's the female as well. Both just have different roles to play. But why is the man getting an extra leverage over the woman that there is a special clause as added into the laws to make sure that a married man uh, cannot be convicted for those who are doing it, the crime that they are doing.
Raghav, your mic is unmuted. Can you add anything to whatever we're saying?
I mean, it felt like he was trying to say something, but
Yeah,
nobody heard it.
I mean, I had to actually go soon, so I just want to add one point before, because like we want to have these brainstorming sessions, right? Actually, this is actually a very good segment to the topic that we were talking about. I think a month and a half ago, we were talking about like some of the interesting topics that we can have these sessions on. And one of the topics was how to reframe the legal structure in India. And I think for this November, I think that is a very appropriate topic. And I would love to invite you all to join the Wednesday 7 p.m. session so that we can talk about this. And I would also like to explore if somebody would like to host the brainstorming sessions as well. So come in and then like we can have that session and we can talk about this as one of the things, so we can talk about, because this is a very prevalent issue. And obviously the whole objective of having a legal system is to ensure that you're um, like creating a society that incentivizes good behavior and disincentivizes like bad behavior, and and at the same time also ensuring that everybody has sufficient amount of freedom. So that is obviously the ideal outcome of every situation where you need to apply law. So I just want to mention that before I have to go. All right. Thanks.
All right. Back to what Prince was saying, I think I kind of agree. The exception that we have right now, it kinds of puts like a certain class of gender above the other. It's like kind of hinting towards the supremacy of like one gender over the other, right?
Yeah, so let's get back to the topic at hand. The keyword here is consent. So, everyone, can you pitch in on how you define consent? Because consent means like yes, no, these kind of just two words, right? But real life isn't that black and white. A lot of things, let's say, they're taken on verbal cues, they're taken on implications. I feel like this is one of the gross miscommunications of human relationships that will forever continue to haunt our civilization. Because sometimes there are no such thing as consent for things which happen in the flow. If that was the thing, unwanted pregnancies wouldn't even be a thing because some things just happen in heat of the moment where you know what they said. It's a popular saying, right? Don't think with your dick. I don't know if this is a good speech to make here, but don't think with your dick. But lot of these things, be it man or woman, lot of this whole activity of procreation, it doesn't happen with rationality in mind. This is something that I feel like a lot of lawmakers have actually considered. So yeah, this a lot of this is like consent isn't well defined because you can't define it in heat of the moment. So everyone, can you like pitch in on what consent actually means to? Because for me, consent means yes or no, but it is not applicable in a lot of situations.
Yes, I agree, Darshan. Like consent is not applicable for lots of things, but it applicable for few things, right? In relationship, if the person is considerably known as he is like forced to do something, he was forced by the other person to do something, then that is not a great sign that you are leading a good relationship or a good life with your partner, right? So you have to have in a specific case that if you feel or if you see that the other person is not feeling happy, that you feel as if you are in a position, then you must, it is your responsibility to ask the other person that whether you are feeling good, or you have to ask the concern whether we can go ahead in this path, or you have something, you have concern in your life. It is necessary as a man or as a woman. It is it is a basic fundamental to ask them, right? If you can't, yeah, you can't expect or you can't have consent for everything. But in few cases, if you see the other person is not happy, then what are you waiting for? You have to go and ask for them whether you are good to go, or like whether you are consent enough to we can proceed with this, or we can just stop and we can move with further else. That's how it is. Okay, that's what the answer I see here.
Yeah,
I want to add one more thing to this. Because like especially in legal proceeding, they definitely they do ask you, like, did you what indications did you provide that they don't have the consent. One of the requirements of rape is that, like, the person who is filing the complaint or something, they should indicate that they actually made explicit attempts to communicate that they are not they don't have the consent to stop or something. So in the question of like what constitutes consent, I think the answer is basically explicit verbal communication. Either, obviously in a different context it would be written and verbal, but in this context, especially specifically like verbal consent. Um, some kind of attempt need to be made to indicate or communicate. You can't just like have it in your mind. Okay? That's the thing. I think that's what I would say as the response to what I think Darshan was asking.
I mean, just to give like a legal perspective, this section in question, section 375, I think what that section defines consent as is like an unambiguous voluntary consent. So if we are talking legally, it could be verbal or non-verbal, but it has to be unambiguous and voluntary.
Yeah, but this is where human communication actually fails, in my opinion, because not everything, for example, let's say, let me give you an example. My friend wants to go to this restaurant, but I don't like that restaurant because it serves shitty food. But I like my friend and I go there, even though this is unambiguous, but no, but I go with it because my friend just dragged me along. I think this also can applicable. I know these analogies are a bit far off, but a lot of these things they cannot be explicitly ambiguous because, like I said, things happen in heat of the moment. Initially, she might be like, even he or she might be saying no, but then again, they're like, since we're just in, let's just do it. There is a, like, let's say, a change in motion of consent. Initially, they might be like, let's say, it's a problem, but then they go along with it. And all these are like very fluctuating. And these fluctuations are the very enemy of the legal system because the legal system operates under the definition that everything is well defined, but these actions are not well defined. They just happen in heat of the moment.
That's the reason why they have these kind of like hearings where they look at like the events that as they happen, so that like they can make a case by case analysis of things. So the whole objective of the law is to provide the backbone, and then like you apply the law in specific to the context. See, you cannot like accuse somebody of like rape when you never communicated your concern. Maybe in your mind you were just reluctantly going through with it, and maybe you were not confused, you were confused with it. But when a case happens, right, they ask like what indication did you give that you are not interested or you wanted to stop. This actually, so if it so happens that you regret what happened, and then you retroactively sort of like think that that was a bad idea, then obviously that is not something that is um, like valid as evidence for rape, because it needs to have like prior communication. So in your case, even in the case of like where a friend is like asking you to come, and you have a terrible experience going out with them, and you were reluctantly feeling that I don't want to go, then that's your fault for not communicating and not making attempts to put yourself in the situation. So consent is an aspect of communication. It's not about how you feel or how these things change over time. At the time, when the event is happening, what attempts did you make to break away, or like resist, or to communicate your lack of intent in pursuing it? These things, communication is important. There are certain responsibilities that you have. That's why there are like provisions where consent doesn't matter. For example, if the person is inebriated and they don't know how to offer, then that constitutes as rape, because um, you can't have sex with somebody who is unable to offer consent. Maybe somebody's like roofied, or somebody's like sleeping, or any of these things can constitute a state where they're not in a position to offer consent. So in that case, the absence of verbal communication does not matter, especially even with kids, right? Like the reason why it says that anybody under the age of 18, it's because they're unable to offer consent. They don't know enough to uh, to say no. They don't know what it is. They're expected to. They're given that privilege to say that like they don't know enough. But once you're 18 and above, it is assumed that it's your responsibility to have the discussion to offer the. So that's why becoming an adult is a big thing, because like you have now legal provisions to actually say no and mean something, or say yes and mean something. So I hope that clarifies the question about consent. And I know that that was a subtle topic in itself, but I don't think there's much of an ambiguity to sort of like uh, at least in the way that you're painting it.
Right.
Thank
For
you, Raghav,
me,
for clearing that
especially
up.
like for me, that example does not do justice to the context at hand, because a person being dragged by their friend to a restaurant that they don't want to go to, and then they just go along with it because they don't want to upset the friend, is like very different from a person giving consent to something that is of a sexual nature. Let's say you are not under the influence of any substance and somebody is forcing themselves onto you, married or not married, right? Your body essentially goes into a fight or flight response. I don't think that happens in the other example. So for me, that example is not justified.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, right? I know it's a far off example, but I just wanted to, like, let's say, bring the element of, let's say, unenthusiastic consent. Even though it is unenthusiastic, at the end of the day, they still agree.
Yeah, so that's your responsibility to have denied it. If you that means that you didn't exercise your part of your duty of like being sure as to whether you want it or not. And like for example, let's say that what you're looking, the word you're looking for is reluctance, reluctant agreement, or like some kind of a reluctantly you're doing something, and that does constitute as consent. Okay, like if you want to like uh, utilize a law to like bring justice to an event where you reluctantly participated in the event and you didn't do enough to resist or to say no or to stop the event from happening, then I would say that you're not eligible for the whatever justice you're seeking,
Ah,
because you do have a responsibility.
exactly. And now we are getting somewhere. So yeah, you said you didn't do enough, right? This is exactly the case with a lot of women here because let's face it, India is a shitty nation for, let's say, women's rights here. So most of them, they just don't speak up. They don't fight enough because they know if they do fight enough, they're going to be put in their place. So
No,
yeah,
no, no. Yeah, I mean,
What
there's
does
also
that
another
mean?
component to this. Like, I think that is something that you didn't touch upon, but I think it's related, which is like consent under duress. Okay, like let's say that I have a knife and I say that like not me. Like let's use somebody else's example. Let's say somebody has a knife and they're trying to like rape a woman, and they basically like force them to give them the consent. Now that is also that would also constitute as rape, because like it's basically they're being forced to offer the consent or forced to agree to not resist or whatever. And these kind of things, that's why we need to have like very explicit definitions as to what these situations are. And I think the way the laws are framed, they definitely do look into these things, because um, even in the example that we saw, right, of like, the definition of rape as it is right now, they're talking about the specifics of like a woman who's having sexual intercourse under these conditions. All these they're going to the specifics. I think that is how you sort of like make sure that there is no abuse of the law.
Yes, just to add to what Raghav said, the law properly defines what is consent and not, rightly said by Rose. And if a law can figure out what consent is outside a marriage, then I'm sure the same law can figure out what's consent within the sanctions of the marriage. Secondly, since societal aspects is the thing that we are talking about, uh, in the context of India, I'll say, rather than giving a consent, negating a consent is a huge aspect of categorizing something as a rape. Because I guess that can be a great first step, uh, or a societal beginning to these kind of issues. That we at least acknowledge that negating consent means no.
yeah, thank you for adding that to that, Prince. Yeah, right now the problem is consent is like it's not a well-defined word in terms of, let's say, in a lot of ways, because the only consent a lot of people know is either yes or no. Because rape is like what? There's a lot of definitions, but a lot of women are not aware that they were raped. That's the problem here because a lot of these things are like we said, everything has to be legally defined, but all these legal definitions, a lot of people do not know. That is the problem. While the more solid we make something, the more it will go over the masses heads. That's also a problem here because legal language is something. Look, there is a huge profession dedicated to, like, let's say, interpreting the constitution and all these legal jargons. So all these are going over common people's head. So I think like this is something like the scales are tipping. The more you try to define something and solidify something, the more language the more complex the language will become. It will just fly over people's heads. So yeah, I think I have to go back on a lot of my statements because if we try, we have to, like, it's a, like what, it's a mind game. The more you simplify, the more loopholes you leave. The more you try to define, the more it'll go over people's heads. So striking a delicate balance between two of them, I think that's the challenge our judiciary is undergoing through right now.
Right, but then having solid definitions might be a better option because the definitions we have right now are flawed. Now, just because the masses may not be able to comprehend it, may not be a valid reason to not come up with better, more inclusive definitions, is what I'm going to say.
Yeah, and in the legal system, it is said that ignorance of a law cannot be treated as a reason for committing a law. Let's say if I commit some sort of crime and then my defense in the judiciary is that I was not aware of the law or the intricacies of law, then that is not something that's gonna make my case any stronger. Additionally, what my personal experiences are, and this can be totally wrong, that whatever laws India have in place is just basic civil decency laws at best. If you even live a basic civil life, try to be a good person, then you are following all the laws of the state. The Indian state already tries to enforce constitutionalism and tries to play a role of absent state, which is totally wrong, especially in the case of governance. But if you are kind of being a civil person, you're following almost all of the laws without any exception.
Yeah, what I see in this case is that there should be a clear proceedings and clear procedure of like how the convicted person or like a suspected person or something like that. You have a convicted person and you wanted to like uh, charge him, and if you are going through legally in these systems, it should be so specific and things should be clear enough that it says that he's something, he's a convicted something like that. Because I am pressing here sometimes through like mutual parties they might in an egoic manner or something else can affect, and they might charge him falsely instead of like a real terms. So through that we have to have clear things so that not like a normal or a common man should affect through these laws. So there should be a clear things that should justify that he is a criminal enough to put him in a jail. So yes, I wanted to add that.
Just to have like a general sense of clarity, what qualifies as criminal enough in this particular case, according to you?
In this particular case, we're still talking about marital rape, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we had this discussion before, right? And like let's say, how do I manage to define it? Yeah, like when I also have a problem defining it. Let's say,
You could use an example.
yeah. So yeah, a man comes under the influence of alcohol or any other angry influence because something shit went on in his workplace, and he comes home and is like, wife, sex, and she says no, but he still grabs her by the head and beats her. This is where I draw the line. I don't draw the line at unenthusiastic consent. The moment he raises his hand, try to abuse her to give him into the act of sex, that is where I'd say marital law becomes a crime. If it is verbal coercion, that's gonna be a different ballgame. But the moment he raises his hand and let's say abuses her into giving him what he wants, yeah, that is where I draw the line. This is where I say marital rape is bad.
You do not think verbal coercion qualifies as like,
Yeah, like I said, verbal coercion means she has the power to say no. Like Raghav said, if you do not
mm-hmm,
explicitly participate in denying it, the legal system can't
mm-hmm,
protect you. But
yeah.
when he comes under the influence of, like, if he forcefully says and you explicitly, no, I don't want to do this tonight. Yeah, that is where she's really defining it. But verbal coercion, if she gives in, like Raghav said, if you don't do your part, the legal system can't defend you. So yeah, this is where I draw the line. The moment he abuses her to get what he wants, that is where I say it's marital rape. Verbal
Right.
coercion,
Mhm. Please go ahead.
yeah, like I said, a verbal coercion, she can say no, end of the story. But the moment he goes violent, that's where I draw the line. This is marital rape and this should be condoned.
But then, if you put emphasis on the word coercion, it does not mean that, like essentially somebody is resisting it or saying no, and you're trying to coerce them into it through means of a certain way of communication or by inducing some kind of fear, right?
Yeah,
And
but
this could
yeah,
be especially
like I
bad.
said, should everything immoral be illegal? Remember, verbal coercion, it is immoral, but is it illegal? Because the woman has every right to refuse doing the act and it won't go anywhere. But at the same time, should everything immoral be illegal? Because it is immoral. Verbal coercion is immoral, but is it illegal?
Should it be? That's the
Should it
question.
be? That's the
Oh, should it
question.
be?
Yeah.
Should it be though?
I mean, like, if we'll like that's it. Let's keep it as a different topic. Illegality, immorality. Let's keep it as a different topic because I will go on a different tangent if I go on that one because I'll start
Like
talking.
for me, this is like a very pertinent thing because let's say in case of a woman who's like financially dependent on the husband and he's now coercing her, now this becomes like a very rough situation to be in.
Yeah, this is a losing game actually. Okay, she has no financial dependence. She's purely dependent on the man. The moment she goes to the cops and say this is happening, she loses that also. I know what I'm saying is absolutely wrong, but this is the reality. A lot of women do not report because they're still reliant on their husbands. So yeah, the moment they get a leeway, they go to the police and say, "Hey, my husband is doing this to me. Do something about it." And yeah, the police come, they beat up the guy, jail him up for 14 days, and they, let's say, they warn him, the next time this happens, you're going to jail. And then after 14 days, after jail time, the moment the man goes home, it won't be the same.
Mhm.
That's the reality. It won't be the same here.
Well, there
Is
are
there a
laws to
solution you
protect.
have?
Yes, Rosa, for your question, either the man should be like well enough, like he is good enough to understand the other person, like the female, to not do it in a verbal way. If she is telling no, then he is good enough, even though she is like financially dependent on her on him. She should be the person should be good enough to understand, or else she should be going other way around. Like either she want to uh, make him, like basically make him understand, or she has to leave. There are two sides only, because you cannot the person who is on that act is the one who can change things, right? So he is the one should take decision whether this should be he should be like morally or virtually like virtue based person. He should be understanding. If he's not understandable or something like that, he's he's a convicted person, or he should be like uh, morally things are not going well there, right? So that's how I see here. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not moral. That's the thing. He's not moral. He'll do whatever he wants. But the thing is, he won't beat her. Beating is where I draw the line. But if he verbally coerces her and she gives in, I'm afraid the legal system cannot save her at this point because let's say, she willingly participated in the act and did not do enough to resist it.
I'm
Many
not
a time
very
they
sure, but then I don't think consent is even legally defined that way. If you were verbally coerced, uh, even if in this case there is a fear of injury, like you are verbally coerced, otherwise you are going to be beaten up. I don't think that counts as, consent, even legally speaking.
were very right.
Then again,
And
there are
additional,
other forms of, let's say, if you want to sleep with me tonight, I'll beat you. That is one way, but there are other ways. I mean, like, look, as a man, I'm saying the brain of a man, it's very convoluted when it comes to things he wants. Especially if he's ambitious enough, he'll go through enough ways. He'll guilt trip anyone into giving him what he wants and make them think it's their fault. Like I said, communication is a complex nuance. Remember, the tongues of great men have led to deaths of more than 30 million people in World War II. And at the same time, that same tongue, it's nothing for him.
Mhm.
Like you
I
said,
think
if you
Prince
if
has
you, if you
been
don't give
trying
me this,
to
I'll
say
beat.
something.
If you don't give me this, I'll beat you. There are other ways. Let me give you an example. Well, if you don't do this tonight, we're not going on vacation next month, which you have been planning for a long time. So how do you define that? Is it good or
That
bad?
is still a very, that is, it's not good or bad. It just is, but there is no fear of injury in this particular case. Like, not going on vacation is not going to significantly harm you physically or mentally, right? So in this case, I'm not very sure where I stand, but in cases where there's an actual fear of injury, I'm definitely drawing a line there. I think Prince has been trying to speak for a while now.
I'll just add that even though it's not exactly the correct equivalence, but the current laws that exist, it's like uh, if someone else murders you, then we are going to charge them with IPC section 3 or 2. And but if your husband or wife murders you, then that's something within the four walls of your houses. Then the state is not gonna intervene. Additionally, uh, the the thing with consent is it's actually not very ambiguous as we think because even if you are verbally coercing someone without even of a fear of injury, you are essentially throwing them or giving to them a lot of trauma that is gonna affect their mental health, and essentially you are that itself is a ground for several legal issues if if this exception was not there. And I'll just say that uh, the married woman should at least be given a choice that uh, they could at least have something to coerce with, that don't force me into something that I don't want to. Otherwise, these are the legal implications.
Yeah, I completely agree on that one. Because I think the current law is just rendering them helpless from all sides. The society already does not help.
I feel like this marital rape law is something we are seeing on the surface. We are not breaking it down into its deeper psyche. One thing which I feel it's on a deeper level is the system of arranged marriage, because let's face it, 95% of marriages in India are arranged marriages, and they don't happen between, like, let's say, the husband and wife. This is premeditated with the, like, what's the family of both the parties. So essentially here marriage is not, let's say, an agreement between two people. It is just two families trying to bargain, trying to make a fair trade, because this is how arranged marriage system works in India. Let's face it, even though it's not a something good of me to tell, but let's face it, arranged marriage here in India is just convenience of marriage between two families. It's just a trade-off. If there's love involved, I'm not going to go there, but arranged marriage here is just between marriage of two families where both families give each other what they want. And in term, and let's say the bargaining power sometimes is equal between the two families, and sometimes it's not equal in two families. So before we start talking about marital rape, we have to look at how, like, let's say, permanent relationships are formed in India. And if permanent relationships are formed under the guise of arranged marriage where both sides give each other what they want, is it, like I said, is it moral for the law to, let's say, protect the one who got more in the marriage? Yeah, so before we start talking about marital rape, I feel like there are a lot of fundamental issues that has to be broken down with how our society is functioning, how relationships are formed in the society, and how we protect, how we attempt to protect these relationships without, let's say, without undermining the nature of these relationships.
I mean, I pretty much agree about this arranged marriage thing, but as far as you saying that it is fundamentally a trade, but I'm not sure if consent is involved in that trade. I'm really not sure about that one.
That's the thing. These are like unspoken terms of trade here, because for a long time, remember, the talk of marital rape is relatively new in India, and even in US it has been relatively new. It has been around 80 years since defined. But before that, it was like explicitly understood that man provides for the woman and the woman gives the man what he wants. It was like that kind of a trade. I know this is something very difficult for me to tell here, because but I'm still telling it anyway. But that's how marriages historically worked. Among the lower classes, let's say among the lesser affluent people, it was just someone wanted a girl for the son, and some son, let's say, and some man wanted us to continue his lineage. It was a fair trade, it was a fair game. But the moment we start going up the economic ladder, marriage between two noble families, let's take two wealthy families, for example, who have a, let's say, a lot to lose and a lot to gain in when a marriage happens. I mean, like, we all know the stories of the European nobility, right? They didn't marry for love, they married for the interest of the state. And of course, anything was fair game when she marries in the interest of the state. So all
That
these,
is a tale of the past. I wonder if it applies to the current
yeah, that's the
scenario
thing. It
in
won't
India
apply
right now.
today. It won't apply today, but we have to consider the fact that all these laws were framed with those times in mind. And if we have to change these now, we have to see if our people have changed. But look, we are all privileged people here. The fact that we are sitting here talking over a Zoom call about all this is right or wrong without let's say, I don't know if any of this impacts us at the moment, but I feel like we are a privileged bubble here. We're living in a privileged bubble. We do not know what goes on in 95% of the country. So the moment we start saying this should be done, that should be done, we have to consider the Cobra effect. Like I think someone mentioned before, we have to consider the Cobra effect here. And marital rape is also like one such Cobra effect. We might be thinking we're doing good for the woman, because I was also like, let's say, pro criminalization of this act until I learned what would happen if it happened. Look, the moment you criminalize something, it serves as a deterrent for some people, and it serves as an incentive for, if no one knows, it's not a crime. This is one subset of the people, and the other subset is they will be deterred, and one more subset is you have to silence them completely. And we saw what happens in Bihar. It's not like, let's say, the moment someone makes any indication of going to the police, they're buried alive. So yeah, we can, while we can say that previously someone mentioned, right? We can't obstruct law because it might be misused, but there are far bigger problems here. What would happen if this law is brought into place and it gives some people false sense of empowerment? Do we want their blood on our hands because we want to, let's say, empower them? But these are all like ground realities, and these are actually happening. The moment you give someone a false sense of empowerment and they do something and it comes back and bites them with a vengeance, that's not the kind of blood the Indian judiciary wants on their hands.
There is
I don't
one
think.
thing I specifically disagree on very strongly is that we'll have to look at the way people think before we make a law. I mean, if that was the case, sati should never have been banned.
And additionally, even if we look into that case, it's so weird. You yourself explained how unfortunate and in a negative uh, connotation are women seen. They have no sense of power. We are discussing, sitting here in a Zoom call, that if we pass a law to strengthen the rights of married women, then the fear is that the man can murder the wife. Is is this even? This is just so barbaric in nature, and uh, 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 this just shows that uh, how how desperate can things get, and if these actions like marital rape are not criminalized, then this is just a first stepping stone towards domestic violence and eventually deeper level of violence against women. Because if you are not stopping someone at the first stage, then he's more incentivized to uh, go the next step, and women are less incentivized to take any action on it because they know that the legal system is stacked against them. And even with the whole police administration stacked heavily against them, if we are not even providing them judicial protection, then how are we even going to call ourselves civilizations? Is it civilization or just man?
Yeah, like I said, we're thinking on the surface. You said, right, it's barbaric, right? Yeah, but that's the reality. A lot of people are barbaric here. So my solution, I don't know if it is practical or ideal, but my primary solution is we have to make sure that every part of the country has some sort of, let's say, a legal body, because 542 villages in India right now, they don't have a, let's say, a government sanctioned legal body in their villages. It's all kap panchayats, it's all kangaroo courts where just five old fat men give justices to women. Look, the first thing we have to do here is, before we pass all this, is we have to strengthen every body of the government, the executive committee in particular, because right now the bar for joining the police is very low. I'm sure you all must have read stories where like the police sided with the, let's say, the perpetrators. I mean, we have all heard of those stories, right? So right now, the only thing we can do is strengthen all three bodies. We have to strengthen the judicial body, we have to strengthen the executive committee, and we have to strengthen the legislative committee. Make sure it covers each and every part of the nation, because whatever applies in Europe cannot apply to India because of its sheer fucking size. And like I said, 540 plus villages in India right now, they don't have, let's say, a proper legal code, and this is where all these atrocities takes place. There is no point in reinforcing something that's already reinforced, because Bangalore, Kolkata, Chennai, they all have like adequate, let's say, adequate legal systems in place. And so the women here are relatively safe, but that's just a minority, only 3% of the women here. But we have to make sure everything goes to breadth and wide without the nation. The police should be spread far across the nation. For that, they need more resources. So the moment all these things happens, then by definition, education across all those places will spread. I mean, I know education is not a good metric of whether one becomes a criminal or not, but it's a stepping stone. You have to spread education all far across the nation, and then we can come to these discussions. I mean, then we can come to these legal discussions of protecting everyone equally. Because giving
Look, I
someone,
agree with everything you have said, but there is one thing I think that is flawed is that everything you said is right. Okay, even if there are like widespread awareness about legal stuff, legal education, proper legal systems in rural areas where women are more prone to facing such sorts of violence. But then, in case that violence still takes place and this said violence is not criminalized, what help is it?
uh, that's the thing here. After all this is done, then we can bring all this into the picture, because all these things, like, let's say, in a perfectly functioning practical government, it would take around, let's say, 15 years to implement. I know 15 years is a long time, but hey, it's been 75 years since we got independence. But another 15 years is nothing more. So the first objective should be spreading all this, then talk about criminalizing all this. The moment where everyone is given a true sense of empowerment, not a false sense of empowerment. But yeah, I do
This
agree with
thing,
you. It should be criminal. It should be practically criminalized at the moment. But I don't think for the like say the majority of the women who try to exercise it and they get killed by barbaric men, it won't be fair to them. So for the time being, is if it's keeping them alive, then everything else can come next.
I mean, on that example, you're saying that there is a high chance that the woman who approaches, like legal services or any kind of seeks any kind of judicial or, like help from the law is at a high chance that she will be murdered by her husband out of rage or whatever reason, right? So,
Let's
does
say
it
it
make
doesn't
it
even have
fair
to go
for
to the
her
lawyer. She
to?
doesn't have to go to a lawyer.
Okay.
The moment she steps out of the house with the intention, I mean, like there will be subtle cues, right, that she's going to do something.
Hmm.
Darshan,
That's where it happens.
there
So
is
it's like
IPC
you either
article,
get. Mhm. Yes, please, please.
there is there is IPC 498A where women are given immense power against the violence due to dowry. We have seen almost zero instance where if a woman has filed a case against the people who are culprit in those cases, those people are brought to justice at the fastest, and those women are given protection by the law. All the things that you have said is right societally. In an anarchical society, that is absolutely true. But what is the basis of state if we are not going to implement something? Because if someone uses those legal measures, then they are at a risk of murder. And then by those indicators, why have laws for rape? Why have laws for murder? Because if someone has already murdered someone, or have committed section IPC 307 half murder, then that person is capable of murder. Let's not have those measures, because that person is very much capable of killing the person who's filing the complaint. It is the basic job of the state to protect the basic fundamental rights of the citizens.
What to do when the state doesn't protect you? How do you protect yourself if the state doesn't have the measures to protect you?
Yeah. Before coming to that point, I currently like think that whether a society really exists in today's world. If I will take that as a like a 60-40 thing, where like 60% of them will be interacting with their like neighborhood or their community, and they will be one speaking. The other rest of the people will be like they will be having something to do, and they will be doing that. They will be communicating their communication or everything will be only with their family and friends and like the online or internet social media where they will learn things. So you cannot in modern world I see is that you cannot directly influence somebody else easily that easily, like like a social media influencers or a cinema or those kind of things might influence, but I don't see a neighborhood person comes and influence you directly or something like that. Even yeah, even in a good way, even if you try to even if you are doing something bad and if he tries to like come and say something that you are doing bad or something like that, people are not in a good shape or in a good mindset that they are not going to accept that easily. How can you tell me like that, or I'm better than you, or some kind of things that they are keeping in their mindset as a I'm superior over my neighborhood, or I'm doing well enough. Those kind of things are actually affecting the people. Okay, I'm you can see that I'm in a good uh, like a societal status. I having bike, I have car, those kind of things. My neighborhood not doesn't have those kind of things are present currently. Okay, but these things whether it influences you directly or not, it is a question mark. So I see that as a to coming to the point, as a societally how we are become a moral person or becoming a good over like being a good person or a gentleman like thing, that that's a question that you yourself you have to develop throughout the years by seeing around what is happening. If you see in the sense in cinema, they are showing something like very something like which is not really applicable or which is not morally good, but they are still showing it to show something new to the audience or something like that. If that is the case, that might influence wrongly the other person who is not well enough to like think that whether it is good or bad. That's what I see.
Coming back to the probability of murder argument, let's say the perpetrator in question gets violent, even with no intention of murder. So, if there is no law in place, personally, the way I see it is that the woman is essentially left with two choices where she has to choose you are going to suffer through this kind of violence or the other. It kind of does not make any sense to me, to be honest.
But it will make sense, right? Look, that's how people live all the time. We choose the lesser of two evils or the lesser of multiple evils. You know what they say, right? Choose your suffering or the suffering chooses you. It's the harsh truth, but this is the condition that women are currently living in right now. They're just doing the bare minimum to let their not husbands kill them in a lot of places in India right now.
Don't you think criminalizing this said kind of violence would like just solve that?
That's what I'm saying. You can criminalize it, but you have to have a solid framework in place to see it to the end. Just say, hey, this is criminal. If someone does this to you, come and tell us. Yeah, but what happens next? What happens next to the like, what's the set course of action? I mean, a lot of people here mentioned that yeah, the moment the dowry comes up, it is swiftly dealt with. How do they deal with? Do they jail that guy or do they? Yeah, that's the question I want to ask. How do they deal with it? Because a lot of these times they just go to the cops and they just go with a slap on the wrist for 6 months of prison time, 6 months of jail time, and what's next? What happens the moment he comes back home? This is something that no one talks about. Okay, that the guy goes to jail after 6 months or 8 months, he comes back home. What happens next?
How are you so sure the woman is still at home? And there is another thing, like there is a probability of a murder taking place, but I don't think normal people, even in case a marital rape has occurred, I don't think any normal man has that kind of motive or that kind of, I don't know. Some people, yes, I don't think anybody has the intention to murder. In most cases, violence might be more of a probability than a murder, is what I'm trying to say here. Because in case of marital rape, even if it's like, let's say it's criminalized, if you murder the woman, right now you're definitely about to get charged and thrown in prison.
Yeah, but what are the chances that it never comes to the light? Like I said, honor killings here, right? A lot of these honor killings cases, they don't come out until like 10, 20, 30 years after the woman is, let's say, murdered. Look, all these saying that one day he will get caught, but majority of the times they never get caught. They take the entire secret to the grave. The only honor killings we hear, the only murders we hear are the ones which actually get found out. But there are 919 murders, no one knows how it takes place.
Look, let's say okay, let's say a marital rape has taken place. The woman reported it, the husband finds out, and now she's murdered. What do you think is the probability of him getting?
Yeah, in that case, he will get caught. Yeah, he will get caught easily, but yeah, like I said, he will get caught. But this is one of the rare cases where he will actually get caught. What if she makes a hint of it that I'm gonna go take it to the cops and she never makes it to the cops?
This is discounting the fact that the woman has family too. If the woman is not reachable for a specific amount of time, then they are gonna file a case, and the prime suspect is gonna be the husband.
Yeah, but like I said, the legal system doesn't extend to anywhere apart from a few cities and villages, few cities and townships in India. But what about those places where there is no electricity or water, which is like 90% of the country right now?
This is where the solution somebody
There are
else
two
gave comes
villages.
in.
There are two villages in India that does not have electricity.
So, like, you're just because that may be the case in those two villages, now we're going to put other women who are in the
No,
majority at
no.
risk.
I just gave an idiom to say that like where electricity or water. That was just an idiom, but the reach of legal system isn't that far. We have to admit because even my grandmother's village and that village is just barely 120 kilometers from here, and the surrounding villages they just have kangaroo courts. I know anecdotal evidence is dismissible in a lot of cases, but we have to face the fact that a lot of villages do not have a legal system and where murder gets away scot-free. And how many of you have seen the India's Daughter documentary? A documentary came out 10 years ago, right? Remember the Delhi rape case where a woman was raped in a moving vehicle and was thrown with a steel rod pierced in her body. How many of you have seen the documentary?
I definitely know of the case, but I haven't watched the document.
Yeah, so when the guys were brought to trial, the four guys, one of them killed himself, and you know what the remaining three guys have said? I've done it a lot of times. Why did they only catch me now? Look, that guy had done a lot of other rapes in his village, but he only got caught for this one because he got caught for doing it in a city. But for him, it was so normalized that it was like an everyday thing for him, like it was drinking water. He said he raped numerous women, and it wasn't like anything for him. That alone gave me insight of how men think when they are brought up in a, let's say, a closed bubble environment. And he's not an isolated case. This is the case with like a lot of people.
Okay, now this one, I got your point. Like, this is where I don't know, it was you or Hari suggesting solid legal systems in like rural areas of India and suggesting education and awareness in these areas. This is where this solution comes in. But how does it tie in with not criminalizing marital rape? That is what I don't understand.
Yeah, see, even before education and all the other amenities reach, and if this false sense of power reaches them and they think, hey, if we do this, we are safe, and they actually do it in a half-assed manner, they approach the local cops. And even before the person, local cops, they'll go and tell their husband, hey, if I do this, you're going to be in big trouble. Look, this is the marital rape. The thing we're talking about is just another power dynamic that isn't well established. Look, if she goes there without any of these things, let's say, like you said, education, the legal system catching up, if she just goes to the look, if she just goes and tells, hey, I have this power and I can do it. And look, a lot of villages, they just have one police station for a state village of, like, let's say 400 people. There's one police station with just two cops. And chances are those two cops are also a part of the village. I know this is a sense of like, let's say, a far-fetched, but these are all things I'm quoting anecdotally from the books I've read, incidents I've read. So yeah,
Okay,
most
those
of the
are
times,
very practical examples and like a reality of most people who reside in like rather rural areas of the country. But then, how does it justify not criminalizing marital rape?
yeah, that's the thing. Let's look, a lot of people are not getting my point. I am not against, like, let's say, criminalizing marital rape. I'm against criminalizing it without a solid structure, because a lot of things without a solid structure, and if you just do it, and that's not going to solve anything. It's going to cause more fatal problems. That's the thing here. Look, yeah, if you have to implement it, like I said, I even said it in my concluding statement, if you're implementing it, don't implement it in a half-assed manner. Make sure there is complete recourse for the woman. But you just give her this morsel of rice and tell this is going to feed you for the rest of your life. Yeah, that's a bad thing. I hope I'm
Oh,
getting my point across,
yeah,
right? I'm against
now you did.
I'm
Yes.
against half-ass criminalization of this. I want it to be done in a complete manner where everyone is given a recourse. But the problem is India is a large country. What might be a boon for us here is a bane for majority of the people.
I think, but most change takes place in that manner. Initially, there is a lot of reluctance. There might be, for a while, like an opposite uh, outcome of what we have been expecting. But then eventually, as people get used to it and as proper systems are established, which takes time, I agree, I think it comes to the right track eventually.
Yeah, I really want to agree with you on that one, Rose. But faith is just a disaster. Faith is something that people rely on when there is no data. All this is just social engineering, and most times social engineering is just a hit or a bust. And that's and gambling is not something I'm fond of. But I really want to stay optimistic and hope that all these changes take place. But for the time being, I'm still reluctant.
For me, I'm not optimistic about this, but I'm also not pessimistic because in such an unforeseen kind of situation, it is a 50-50 bet. And like as a woman, right, I'm willing to take that bet instead of just staying in a situation where something happens to me and not, I'm not in a position to like go and have criminal proceedings against somebody who's done this to me.
Additionally, I always point out 498A in these discussions because it is really it has turned out to be some sort of a magical spell for the women because earlier women literally had no rights concerning with the abuse that they suffered in marriage. And Darshan also pointed out that they do suffer abuse. And this 498A is not just used against violence for dowry. This is used for almost all kind of violence that the woman in marriage suffer, and this has also led to Supreme Court diluting the 498A section because Supreme Court is seeing that women who are facing other issues in the marriage, like marital rape, for instance, are using 498A to get out of that relationship and make sure that they're safe and carry on with their lives. So if we actually do put a proper framework against marital rape, then firstly, these kind of quote unquote misuse is gonna stop, and people are actually gonna have a lot of trust in the judicial system to the point that there is very less judicial presence in far off villages of India. There is a simple solution. Let's have local panchayats deal with these issues and then report it to the DCs. If the local panchayat is dealing with these issues and reporting it to the DC, then we have directly kind of incorporated a proper structured judiciary and the local judiciary that works in several villages, because we are linking DC, which is part of the district courts, and the local the panchayats. I won't call it local judiciary.
That's quite an interesting solution, Prince. I don't know if it is being done or not, but what you said is actually quite feasible. The thing is, yeah, again, I like to play the devil's advocate here, but the thing is, you have to negotiate with the panchayats for willing to share their power, because the panchayat plays the role of like what is that term? Judge, jury, executioner. That's the power of these kangaroo courts. So the thing is, we are essentially taking away two of their powers here. We are taking away their executive power and we are taking away the judicial power. We can only allow them to report. So yeah, we have to break down. I think we can't break it down legally. We have to break it down systematically. Take away their power slowly and make sure that the only power they have is just reporting. We have to make sure that they don't act as judge, jury, and execution. So yeah, that's quite a wonderful solution, Prince. Regarding and in this way, we can also have a decent count of what is happening so that we can come up with laws which can benefit majority of the people. So yeah, I think the first step, your solution is a good thing to do for the first step.
I agree. I think that's a great solution, and I see it working out practically.
It's the first time someone is happy with the introduction of bureaucracy.
Well, bureaucracy is bureaucracy for a reason, because every law we have right now, be it aviation laws or civil laws, every law has come as a result of bloodshed, and every law has come as a result of bloodshed, and they are trying to prevent it. So yeah, people can shit on bureaucracy in the legal system all they want for being slow, but it is currently the best system we have got.
Yeah, I think we're nearing a conclusion because I think we all agree that it should be criminalized. And for me personally, instead of bringing in a separate law, the exception that currently exists need to be scratched off. Because why classify, like one type of essentially sexual assault into like a category where in one certain case a perpetrator is not a perpetrator anymore.
Absolutely, Rosa, I agree with you. All rape should be treated as equal. There is no such thing as one rape is worse than the other. So yeah, 100% I agree with you. And of course, thank you for hosting this wonderful session, Rose. I did learn a lot and I did have some of my views changed. So yeah, thank you, Rose. Thank you, Prince. And others aren't
Thank you
there,
for
but I'd like to thank
participating.
them for taking part in this debate and widening my horizons.
Thank you, Darshan.
It's
Thank you for
about
being a part of it.
Yeah, this debate is about widening perspective and not changing perspectives. It's good that you did join the other side, but that's not the motive.
Yeah, it's just a way to look at other people's perspectives, right? I had a great session today. Thank you for joining, guys. See you in the next one. You, Prince, especially great solution right there. Definitely a practical one.
Great job.
All right. See you. Bye
See
bye.
you.